Thanks so much for watching today's episode. I am going to show you how to make a salt bar, or some people call it a Solacefa bar, which basically means using a lot of salt in your bar of soap. Why would you do that? People used to do a little bit of salt water in place of their lye water in their soap to create a harder bar of soap. And if you're a longtime watcher of this channel, you know that I do a lot of sodium lactate in my soap. And sodium lactate is essentially a salt that helps to harden bars of soap. Well, in this case, if you do a lot of salt, up to 50% of the total recipe, it makes a really wonderful, creamy, almost lotion-like lather that some believe to be detoxifying because of all the salt in it. For today's recipe, I'm going to be using the Brambleberry Pink Sea Salt in the medium grain. I like this because it does give just a little bit of texture on the top when you sprinkle it, but then on the bottom, you can really see a couple of the fine little medium grain sea salts, and they look really fun and festive and kind of cool. So I'm using the medium one, but any salt will do except for magnesium salt or dead sea salt. So why not dead sea salt? Why not magnesium? Those are comprised of different ingredients, meaning they're not just a straight up sodium chloride. And those extra ingredients can be really oily and really weepy. In fact, I made some bars with some of the dead sea salt so you could just see all those extra minerals and all the extra weepiness coming out. This lather doesn't even lather at all. It's not lotion-like lather, it's just kind of disgusting and oily. So no dead sea salt, no magnesium sea salts. Use a regular sea salt, like in this case, again, the pink sea salt from Brambleberry. You could even do table salt. And again, I'm doing about 50% in this recipe of sea salt. So a lot of soap makers on the internet you'll see are making salt bars with 100% coconut oil. Honestly, you don't need 100% coconut oil. It's totally a personal preference on how much lather you want. I'm really comfortable with like a lotion-like lather. So this is about like just 80% coconut oil, but some people go all the way down to about 30%. What you'll notice is the less coconut oil, the less lather you have. But remember, the lather and the bubbling ability is not what makes your bar something that actually cleanses. What makes the bar actually cleanse is that thin layer of oil and bubbles where the dirt actually just rises to the top of that film, and then you rinse that whole thing away. So it's a misnomer or a myth that the larger the bubbles, the more cleaning you're getting. For this design, it moves pretty quickly because of all the salt, so we're just going to do a simple in the pot swirl, and I did some sea clay and some colorant, and with the sea clay, I actually prepped it using water. Why is that? Well, clay really absorbs water beautifully, and so if you just add the clay directly to the soap, what ends up happening is it dries out the soap where it's at, and that can cause cracking or just a more dry bar of soap. And so I prepped it with a little bit of water rather than prepping it with oil. Finally, for this project, I used Brambleberry's Frosted Sea Glass from the Salt of the Earth collection. It is very fresh and clean smelling. Smells like the ocean. It smells like a little bit of bergamot in there. I definitely get those ozonic notes, which basically means fresh air notes in there. It's wonderful. I would definitely say it's a unisex fragrance too. So I have my oils all mixed up and of course melted as well. I'm suited up for safety. That's the one thing you never take for granted. Only get one set of eyes, so goggles, gloves, pants, make sure children and pets are in the other area, you're in a well-ventilated area. I have my lye water already mixed up as well. So this recipe is palm-free, which I love, and I went ahead and splurged oils-wise. I'm using shea butter and argan oil. If you're looking at this, you're like, oh, no, that is way too much money. Avocado oil or sweet almond oil would go great in place of that argan oil. I just love it in skincare so much, and so I really wanted to make a luxurious bar, so that's why I used argan oil. Stick blender is ready. So in this case, I'm going to split my recipe so I can do my in the pot swirl. So I have another container, the Brambleberry Easy Pour container, ready to pour about 300 milliliters of my total batch off as soon as I get to a pretty thin trace. We're going for a thin trace, remember, because we're adding a lot of sea salt. I can usually tell when we're at kind of a thin trace versus a false trace by a couple things. One, the color. This is too yellow. And two, there is like minute small graininess in here. So when I look kind of down the side, I can see that this is not a very smooth mixture. So just a little bit more blending before I feel confident that this isn't going to separate on me. And now I'm going to pour off 300 milliliters into here, but I'm going to fragrance the entire batch first. And this fragrance really does perform well, so I can put it into the entire batch and not really worry about it accelerating trace while I'm messing around with the salts and the colors and the like. So I'm just gonna hand mix this fragrance in and then pour off 300 milliliters into my container. Now, for this guy, I'm gonna do a little bit of titanium dioxide, just about 1 tablespoon. And all that's gonna do is just help give me a really nice kind of white background with which to blend with, because I want my green to pop, because there's not very much green. And I've gotten a little bit of titanium dioxide off the bottom, because even though I dispersed it already, it definitely wants to just clump up at the bottom. Just gonna hand mix this in. I will stick blend it in just a second though, just to make sure all those titanium dioxide chunks are fully mixed in. And then I'm gonna add all of my sea clay and all of my green to this one, and I'm gonna get all the sea clay off the bottom. I did pre-mix, so there's just, but it does sink to the bottom because of course it is definitely a heavier clay. Gonna hand blend that really quick. And then I'm just gonna give both of these a quick stick blend. Now, once I add my salt, everything starts to move pretty quickly. So keep that in mind, that you wanna make sure that everything is ready. So my mold is ready to go. I'm using a Brambleberry mold that is individual cavities because I really like the look of these bars when they're done in individual cavities. I'm just gonna give this a quick stick blend. And now I'm gonna add all my salt. I'm gonna get my mold, bring it close at hand. Gonna add all my salt to this main batch and just mix it right on in. And then I'm just gonna do an in the pot swirl. And this is really beautiful. It's not thickening too fast at all. I love how this fragrance works. And an in the pot swirl is really a personal preference thing. So some people just tend to, once they've got this poured, they literally just pour in and let the design kind of go where it is. It's so tough. I'm going to take the thin end of this and just kind of do a little bit of an extra swirl, just so we get a little bit of swirling going on before we start to pour. But the natural pouring is going to give this a good swirl. So now that I'm looking at this from the side, I can totally see that I did a great job with my thin trace. This is a beautiful thin trace. It's also so thin that it's not suspending my pink sea salt. And so if this ends up happening to you and you don't want to ruin your swirl, a couple things you could do. One, you can wait like 5 minutes until this is actually thick enough and give it just a one kind of big scoop to get the salt to stay. Or if you're a little more impatient like me, you can actually just take you can just take a spoon and just kind of start to ladle your salt in. And then by the time you're done ladling your salt in, your rest of your batch will have thickened. And the reason I like the ladle concept is because you can keep some of your swirl going. But this way, we get the best of both worlds. We get our swirl at the top, we get the salts that are deciding they want to sink to the bottom, and we're able to make sure that we maintain the kind of design integrity as well. So I'm just going to do 1 scoop of each of the salts from the very bottom before I pour my top in. And again, by that point, we'll be thick enough that it's not going to be that big of a deal that the salts decided they wanted to not suspend. Now we have a lot of beautiful soap at the top that we are going to be able to showcase how fun the in the pot swirls are. So with in the pot swirls, you can do a couple things. One, you can just kind of pour in one spot, which leads to kind of concentric circles, which is fun. Or some people like to kind of pour back and forth and back and forth, and that leads to just a different look too. So we have the circle and then the kind of back and forth look. It's just a personal preference. In the pot swirls are such a good swirling device, especially if you're brand new, because you're not dirtying a lot of dishes. You don't really have to worry so much about keeping your tray super, super, super thin. You're not trying to get lots of colors in. And so now that I'm almost done, I'm kind of thinking, well, how do I want to really finish this off? And what I really want to do is just do some of that pink sea salt at the very top of all these, so they end up really having that kind of cute little, hey, this is really salt, and looking like they have some decoration on the top. And then while I'm still suited up for safety, I'm just gonna toss some of the salt on. And I like to do just kind of a quadrant, so like a little side of the mold as opposed to the whole thing. But that's, again, that's a personal preference thing. You can do like 1/2 of the mold. You can do kind of a side little quadrant there. And either way, remember, this is all just decoration. It's gonna come off in the first wash, but it's really fun and adds some interesting depth, and the pink and the green look really cute together. So these are gonna harden up super fast. I don't really have to make sure that they go through gel phase, so I'm not gonna put them on a heating pad. And honestly, they'll be ready to pop out in just a day or two. So even though these are going to be ready to pop out in just a day or two, they still do need to cure and dry for the normal kind of 4 to 6 weeks before you give them away or you sell them. So I just made these a couple days ago. That's the nice thing about making salt bars, is they're ready to pop out and right away, really, just a couple days. I love using individual molds for salt bars because then you don't have to worry about cutting, so you don't have to kind of worry about that crunching through the salt. And then also the lines come out so beautifully crisp and clean. I like how I can see the individual grains of the salt, and of course the little salt sprinkles on the top give kind of a cute festive look, although of course they will go away in the first couple of washings. Thanks so much for watching today's episode. If you like this video, well, like it down below, and of course subscribe to our channel so you can get notified every single time we come out with a new video. If you're making this project, or really any project that has to do with soap, toiletries, and anything with Brambleberry products, be sure and hashtag it on social media, #BrambleOn, so we can all see what you're creating and get inspired. Until next time, happy soaping. It's the double wave. It's the double wave. It's the double wave.